first over, he'll take the pull on, he'll take the drive off, in the sense that he likes to play his shots and he's not afraid to be put on the back foot. So I think his judgment in that area has got to be really, really tight.
So cricket last stories for me, Neel Khagram. Today we're joined by Toby Radford. Toby, how are you doing?
Very well, thanks. Good to speak to you.
Thanks for coming on. So Toby, you were involved in West Indies cricket up until 2019 for the last 7 odd years, and this is kind of going to be a West Indies special. They're in town. They've kind of been hailed as bringing Test cricket back. So with Toby, you're the assistant coach and batting coach primarily. We're going to go through the strengths and weaknesses of their batting lineup. Before we get into it, Toby, let's talk about your playing career when you were playing. Middlesex and Sussex, can you talk a little bit about your...
Yeah, I joined Middlesex very young, actually. I joined Middlesex as a 16, 17-year-old, and I was on I don't know if they still have them now, but I was on a summer contract, so I'd get a bit of income in the summer, which would help me with my studies. So I signed very young with them, played with them, and then I was there probably 7 or 8 years, finished my studies at university, did a journalism degree, and then went down and played at Sussex. So I always felt I was one of those who, I scored a lot of second-team runs. I won the second 11 player of the year 2 or 3 times, I think, and hit 26 second-team hundreds. But I was one of these, I think, I had my career at a very strong Middlesex side, and it was always very difficult to get into the first team. It didn't matter how many runs you were scoring in the second team. You had Gatting, Ramprakash, Butcher, Desmond Haynes, a lot of international players. So it was hard to break in. And I think in the end, it probably affected my confidence. And then when I did get opportunities, I was always kind of, almost trying too hard, because I thought if I don't get a score, I'll be dropped again. So I probably never quite fulfilled. I had this great second team career, but didn't really deliver on the first 11 sort of side of it, which I think is a little bit of a regret, because I think, you want to maximise your potential, don't you? But didn't quite do that.
And then when it came to coaching, you involved in setting up the Middlesex Academy, bringing through the likes of Stephen Finn. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a good story with Steve Finn, because I'd seen Finney in a role that I'd played with ECB, with Esker before, where I was working for the regional sides. And I'd seen Finney as a 13-year-old, and then I became Middlesex Academy director. And I thought I really wanted to sign Finney. And I remember there was a regional game going on, I think it was up at Oundle, and it was a long way from my home, so I drove probably 140 miles to go and get his signature. But I heard when I got to the ground that Keith Fletcher from Essex was also there trying to get the same signature. And as I got there, I could see him in his deck chair. And I thought, God, I can't come all this way, drive all this way, and not come back with what I, set out to do. So as they were coming off for their lunch break, Finney was walking off the field. I thought, well, I'll go on the field. I did something I've never done. As they walk, I've actually gone on the field and said, look, Finney, I've come all this way. I really want you to sign for the Middlesex Academy. Would you do it? And thankfully he said yes. And, he's never looked back, and he's gone on. He's been a great county player and played international cricket and a great lad. But that's how we signed him. And I always think, he may well have ended up at Essex.
Yeah, and then you went on to actually coach the first team, highlight big in 2008, winning the T20 competition. How was that as a day for you?
It was, honestly, it was unbelievable. I remember waking up that morning, blue sky. We didn't see a cloud all day. Everything just seemed to go to plan. I mean, we'd had a fantastic tournament. We had a nicely balanced team. We had power hitters. We had Dirk Nannes, pace with the new ball. We had a lot of quality left-handers. I mean, Joyce, and we had the likes of Milan coming through, O.A. Shah, we had international players. It was a fantastic team. We'd had a really good run in the tournament. I think we'd won something like 12 out of the 14 matches. We had a really good tournament. And as I say, we woke up that morning, cloudless, won the first game, and the final was just incredible. I mean, we won off the last ball. I'll never forget it. Bowling the dot ball. So I think that Tyrone Henderson bowled the dot ball at the end to win. It was just amazing. I mean, the whole atmosphere. And we were staying in the same hotel as the Kent side as well. And they were great in defeat, really. And we had a great night at the bar, having a few drinks, some stories, a few guys playing some songs on the piano. It was just a wonderful memory. And it's the kind of thing I think you play or you coach the game for, those days like that. Yeah.
And then talk about your move into West Indies cricket, initially setting up their academy and then obviously moving through to first team coaching. Highlights being you're involved in the 2012 T20 success, and recently, winning that, involved in the coaches head of that in that 2017 Headingley Test match where Shai Hope got 200s, and recently in the 2019 series where you beat England. Just talk about your time coaching in West Indies cricket.
Yeah, well, I left Middlesex, I think it was about 2010. And then a job came up in the West Indies, and the job was basically to set up and run their, what they call it the High Performance Centre, but it was basically the West Indies Academy. And it was bringing in all the best players from the different islands, probably 12, 14 players, putting together a programme for them, getting a staff together, and then really, developing these players. And I look back, and on that first intake, we had Shannon Gabriel, who was clearly quick, bit raw, but quick. A young Jason Holder, a 19-year-old Jason Holder, Shane Dowrich, who's now the main wicketkeeper. And I think what was really nice, having gone through with them over the last few years, from being young academy players to then suddenly now being fully fledged international cricketers. And quite a few of that first intake are going to be taken to the field against England, in a few weeks' time. So I think that's what's been really nice for me as a coach, is to see that growth, not just in them as cricketers, but I think as individuals. You've seen them grow up, and you've built really strong relationships with them. That's been great.
Yeah, so we're going to talk. We're going to go through a kind of breakdown the batting lineup, talking about strengths and weaknesses. But before we get into that, just a word on the team and the support staff coming over during these crazy times we're living in. Huge credit to them.
I think it's an absolute credit to all of them involved. I mean, they will have been seeing on the news, no doubt, that the UK has been badly hit by this virus, as bad as anywhere in the world, to be honest. A lot of deaths, a lot of people very ill with it. And it is a risk for them. And we also know that the BAME community has been hit even worse. So, to come over as black guys coming into an environment that's not only where the virus is rife, but where they know potentially they could be more at risk as well, I think shows a lot of courage. And, hats off to them enormously, I think, from everyone here.
And then how do you see things playing out on the field?
Well, look, I was involved with the last series over here, and it was fantastic. I mean, it was great. Always get a great following West Indies, England. I think back to that first Test match, which was a pink ball game at Edgbaston. I think Cook got 200. We got blown away. I mean, the ball went sideways. Batters got blown away, and everyone was so down at the end of that game. And you thought, God, I hope this isn't going to be the way the series goes. But the lads, as they often do, the West Indies, when they're on the rope, they come out fighting and they start swinging. And from being really punished in that first match, we went up then to Headingley for the second one, and it was just phenomenal. One on the end of the last day, Shai Hope got 200s, Craig Brathwaite got 100 and a 90, and we saw some really quality cricket. I think the bowlers, bowled England out twice, and we scored virtually 400s between the batters. So that was great. It built it up to this big last game at Lord's. I'll never forget that. Won the toss, weather changed, it swung all over the place, and it became really hard work batting on there. And I remember Jason coming off batting, he faced Stokes, and he said, I've never seen a ball swing like that. And the ball was hooping around corners both ways. And it was quite a tough match for us. And in the end, we ended up losing that. We lost the series, but we felt what a great series we'd been involved in. We had a chance to win it, having won that second Test. And it was wonderful, I think, for the team to play the way they did, to come back from where they were, and to have such an exciting series. So if it's anything like that over these next 3 matches, I think everyone will be in for some wonderful entertainment.
So perfect, Toby. Can't wait to kind of get into your analysis. There's no one that's been closer to these players. So yeah, let's get into it now.
Craig Brathwaite. Craig Brathwaite is he's the type of player. He's almost Shiv Chanderpaul-like. He is the guy that can hold the innings together. He is the one player that could bat for a day and a half. If he gets in, he's got the concentration and the mindset to bat a very, very long period of time. I was with the team in when we played Pakistan out in Sharjah about 4 years ago, and he batted the whole of the game. He batted the whole of 2 innings. So he's got pedigree of scoring hundreds in Test cricket, but also batting very, very long periods of time. The big thing I think with Craig, and having worked with him, is his footwork. And I think if he has a weakness that England will, I'm sure they watch the videos the way all the teams watch the videos these days, is they'll want to try and pin him on the crease early on, get him stuck on the crease where occasionally he'll just have a little fence and he might nick one behind. So working with him as a batting coach, I've always said to him, look, this is what they're going to do to you. They're going to be in and around off stump, really get you just sort of almost fencing at the ball. Just be very positive with your foot movement. Be really positive in terms of, if you are going to play, make sure you get back into the ball. Anything outside your eye line, you lead. But be very positive in and around the off stump. Because if they come straight at him, he's always good at working the ball off, and he's solid defensively. And pace has never been an issue for Craig. He plays pace very, very well. So my feeling with him is got to get his feet moving and get back into the ball. But England will obviously be trying to expose that. Well, John Campbell came into the team in the back end of my period with the side. So I sort of had him for just about a year, I would have said. Very attacking player, very attacking, certainly for an opening batter. He's more of a modern day opener. If Craig Brathwaite's the Jeff Boycott, the old fashioned type Test opener, in John Campbell you've got the complete opposite. You've got he's a left-hander, but he's quite aggressive. He will, if you got back of a leg, even in the first over, he'll take a pull on, he'll take a drive on. So he is someone who likes to score and he likes to play his shots. And I think England will already have seen a bit of that last winter in the Caribbean. For me, again, something I would talk to him about is what teams will look to do is to starve him of those scoring shots. And he's got to be patient because he's going to get those periods in Test cricket where it's not all going to be entertainment. You might have the ball doing a lot, so you've got to be tight in your defence. You've got to earn the right to go and play your aggressive shots. So talking to him, it's about getting the balance right. Of yes, don't change your aggressive game because that's what makes you who you are. But you've still, in Test cricket, you've got to have periods where you might have to go through dry spells and guts it out. From an England point of view, I would, very much they'd be trying to, build up dot balls, because if you build up pressure with John, that unlike Craig, who's quite happy to play dot ball after dot ball all day, John will want to go at it at some point to play some of his expansive shots. Well, Shai's one of the most elegant players, I think, in world cricket. I mean, and he's a real talent. I mean, he's a beautiful player to watch. And had this wonderful, 100 in both innings against England last time we were here, and with Craig, I think helped set up that win at Headingley. So he's done well here before. He clearly will bring that confidence in here. He's a fine player. What's been interesting, I think, for Shai is in the last couple of years, his one-day batting goes in at the top of the order in one-day cricket. His one-day batting has really taken off, but his stats in the longer format with the red ball have gone the other way. And it's quite interesting because after the excellent series he had against England here in 2017, we then went on tour to New Zealand. And it was a really tough tour. It was a tough tour for the whole team, but it was tough for Shai as well. And it was interesting how they bowled at him. They'd obviously looked at the footage from England's series, and he had very little fall to him. They really went more back of a length and shorter at him, and bowled more at his body and more up a sort of shoulder height. And it was almost like certainly Trent Boult and one or two of their guys did that. And for him, I think it was about now coping with that, because I think that's how teams are going to go at him. They've seen these beautiful, elegant cover drives and clips, and he's got a lovely back foot punch. He has all the shots. I think where England potentially will test him is, hang on a minute, we don't want to give you any of these lovely drives and clips. We're going to be aggressive at you, and we're going to force you back. Clearly, they're going to have the pace to do that, but with Archer, they've got that. And they'll probably want a wicket that's got a bit of pace in it as well. But I'm sure England, when they look at the footage, they know anything full, he's a wonderful player. But if you go and test him a little bit and sit him on the back foot a bit, you're more likely then to get him out when he does come forward, because he might be a little bit late getting there. So I think that will be the strategy bowling at Shai. Shamar Brooks, he was another one. He was on that first intake at the academy. So I know Brooksy very well. And Brooksy, lovely lad, been very, very patient. He's had to wait his turn because Brooksy has scored a lot of runs in domestic cricket for Barbados, but hasn't quite got into the West Indies team. And his turn's only just come in this last year or so. So he's been a really patient guy. He's gone on about his work, and weight of runs and performances in domestic cricket have finally got him the opportunity I think his game and his talent deserves. Was always a very good player of spin, a very wristy, excellent player of spin. If he had a weakness against quicker bowling, it was potentially squaring up a bit. Gets a little bit open, which makes him strong through the leg side. But you could, with a good away swinger, you could occasionally nick him off to behind the wicket. So whether that's something he's now worked on in the last year or so, I'm not too sure. But look, a solid player, had 1 or 2 scores, I think, against India in a series just before Christmas. And is capable of playing a long innings. He's had long scores, he's batted long periods of time. So it'll be interesting how he goes, because hasn't toured it with the West Indies before. This will all be potentially a little bit new for him. But he's very capable, very capable player. Jermaine Blackwood, been doing a bit of work with Jermaine Blackwood actually with the batting booth. He's been sending his videos over from Jamaica, so I've been working with him, chatting with him, analysing him. And I know Jermaine from when I went back with the West Indies 4 or 5 years ago. So I spent a fair bit of time with him on other tours. And he's one of these guys he's been in and out of the side. He's had hundreds for the West Indies. He's had some big scores, and then he's had these little periods where he hasn't quite delivered, and then he's been dropped again. So his career's been a bit in and out of the team. He comes into the side now on the back of a brilliant domestic season. He scored more runs in domestic cricket this last period than any other player, including a double hundred. So he's really coming in on good form, and he should be really confident. Last time he was here in that match at Headingley, he had 2 scores, I think, a 40-odd. He had a 60-odd at Edgbaston. So he did actually have some really good contributions on the tour last time. So I feel with Jermaine, he's the type of player that could take the game away from England. He's certainly an aggressor. He's a bit like Campbell. He's a bit like John Campbell in the sense that he likes to play his shots, and he's not afraid to be put on the back foot. So I think with Jermaine, it's a case of, if I'm talking to him again, it's similar to the conversation with Campbell. It would be, if you're going to have periods, don't be afraid to suck up and have the quiet periods. You've always got the shots in you, but be very selective in Test cricket. It's not always about scoring. But he's shown this year with a double century, as I say, that he can get the big scores and he can bat the long periods of time. What he can do is turn a game very quickly on its head. So even if the backs were to the wall and West Indies had lost a few wickets, if Blackwood comes in, he could quite quickly go bang, 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 and suddenly England could be under pressure. He's played that type of innings before, and I could see him still playing that type of innings again. Yeah, Roston Chase, all-rounder, which is nice, comes in, bowls a few overs, picks up his wickets as well. Again, he's had periods where he's had centuries. He made a wonderful 100 against Pakistan a few years ago, and he was in the form of his life. When he gets a bit out of form, it tends to be that his feet get stuck on the crease. When the moving ball, feet get stuck on the crease, and because his feet don't move, his hands then try to compensate. So he comes a bit vulnerable, nicking off or getting stuck and getting LBW. So the message to Roston when he's been in those situations has always been, look, you're not going to get long, big strides against quick bowling, but you've got to get some transfer of weight, even if it's a little bit forward and a little bit back. And as best you can, your bat's got to come up and down in a straight line. He can occasionally get caught playing in we call it a bit of a C shape, where the bat's coming out to in to out. So even if it's not swinging a lot, it can expose someone whose bat comes a little bit out to in. So for me, with him, if he gets his foot movement in, it kills the swing and he's in a much better position. And that's when he's playing well, he's getting foot movement in. If he's not, he's stuck on the crease and his hands are going at the ball. But I'm sure England will be seeing that when they look at the tapes of him. Shane, look, when we came here last time, very early in the tour, Shane was actually in a bit of a low place. He was a bit low on confidence, and England went quite hard at him in that pink ball match at Edgbaston, and he was in a bit of a low place. I think confidence was shot a little bit, and the short ball, he was having problems with the short ball. And I remember him even in the nets against our own lads. He wasn't happy with his method, and just generally wasn't in a great place. And the message to him was, and it was after the New Zealand tour as well, the message was to him, look, you've got to go away, you've got to do some work on the short ball, have a method, for how you're going to defend it and cope with it, but also a method in terms of how you're going to score. Because once you start scoring off it, you put the pressure back on the bowler, and then he thinks, hang on a minute, I'll bowl elsewhere. And we know that you've got a lovely cover drive, you've got a great cut, and you've got other clips off, you've got other shots you can score off. And he did. And this is what I love about Shane Dowrich. He went away and he did. He worked on his game. He improved. He got himself a pull shot. He started to work. He became tighter defensively. And since then, he's looked a far, far better player because he always had a front foot game. What he didn't really have, I think, was a game, when it was getting tough and aggressive, anything from sort of chest to head high, he didn't really have a method there. And he's gone away and he's got himself a method. And since then, you've seen his stats have gone up. He's put some really good scores together. He got 100 against England last year in the Caribbean. So I think he comes in a far better player now than he was when he came here last time. And I think he should come here very confident because I think he's got a game that could do well here, to be honest. Chase, nicest bloke in world cricket, wonderful guy, look, top player, got a double 100 last year at Barbados in the first test match against England and really showed what he's capable of. Plays very straight, he's got a good technique, Jason. He's got a really good technique, and if he gets himself in, once he gets himself in and gets in that zone, come back long, can get big scores. He's very, very capable. I think if there is an area that England would look to exploit, it would probably be channel balls, back foot. And it's an area that I've always talked to Jace about and we've looked to work on and we have practiced, is that channel ball, away swing, good pace, but balls that you've either got to leave or if you are going to play them, you've got to be right across into line. I think sometimes with Jace, he gets dragged into sort of back foot punches when either he's not quite close enough to the ball or the shot isn't quite on because the ball's moving or it's bouncing too steeply. So I think his judgment in that area has got to be really, really tight. Because if he's not getting out there, he's very solid. He plays, anything coming back in at the stumps, he plays back past the bowler. He can clip off his legs. The short ball doesn't faze him. So, he's a very all-round player, Jace. He's just got to get in the zone and he's got to make sure that that back of a length ball in that corridor outside off stump, that he's not sort of punching half-heartedly and nicking them off into the slips. If he doesn't do that, he'll get scored because he can bat.